this behind me. One, two.
Yeah, go. I'll sit here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, I think.
I can sit down.
Does it matter? Why does he care? Why do they care so much?
Should I just start?
Oh, I see.
I must be breaking some rule here to be up twice in a row, so I hope I don't get slapped a fine. But anyway, what we're going to do right now is we're going to talk a little bit about AI, and we're going to talk about some of the trends and some of the things we're seeing. Before I do that, though, I wanted to give a little bit of a report. I don't know if we can flip the slide to the next slide. Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to do is before we get into the panel discussion and introduce the panelists, I wanted to tell you guys about some of the stuff we're doing at GCV around AI. And what we've done is we formed something called the Global AI Council, and we did this last fall. And some of you may know George Hoyam from In-Q-Tel. He and I have been chairing this. And the goal of this is to create an agenda and programs around AI for GCV, to educate the members and to promote discussion among us on some of the topics of interest. And some of you may be wondering, like, why am I involved? I'm a financial VC now. I'm not a corporate anymore. Well, I actually used to be a corporate. So I spent 20 years running business and corporate development for NVIDIA, where I set up their ecosystem programs, their venture program, did all of their M&A work. So I have a deep relationship with GCV, and we actually started this while I was at NVIDIA, and Christina and Jim and the team asked me to stay on board to continue this. But the goal is to get everybody involved, and so you see my personal email address there. We actually had a very good meeting yesterday of the Global Council. We have a bunch of founding members, and what we want to do is promote inclusion, add people, diversity. So anybody who's interested in being part of the AI Council and kind of the founding membership should do that. And so what do we do? So we actually started putting on events. So we had I wanted to report on one of the amazing things we did. So in March, we actually presented a roundtable, and a couple of us on the panel were there. And I hosted it actually in my backyard in Atherton, and I'm going to show you a couple of pictures. But these are the kind of things that we talked about. So we had three really engaging small group discussions. One was around AI platforms, so chips, systems, edge. One was around digital health, and one was around privacy. And not only did we talk amongst ourselves, but we brought in some pretty well-known and well-heeled experts in these fields. Some of you may know Seth, who's the chief AI officer at IBM. Naveen Rao was the founder of Nirvana, which was sold to Intel and now has his own AI company again. We brought in the CEO of a company called Artisite, who's making really major inroads in digital health. And from that meeting, there was actually an investment made in his company. He didn't come looking for investment, but it was made. And then Eric, who's also on the panel, and Prince Kohli had a deep discussion among the group on AI privacy. And we had fun, too. So these are just a couple of the pictures of what happened. And if you see on the top left there, there's like a little shield, and that's actually the pizza oven. So we used my backyard, and we had a really good time. And it was probably, having done these events for many, many years and having built an ecosystem at NVIDIA doing it and put on like scores of events, I believe this was like the most engaging, most interesting discussion group I've ever been involved in. So whatever we did it right. So the reason I'm mentioning is that we want to do it again, and we want you guys to be involved. And then George Hoyam is right there in the vest, and he couldn't be here. George has been promoted at In-Q-Tel, so he couldn't be here, but George enjoyed playing with my dog. He was stealthily petting the dog while the presentations was going on. So I figured I'd make fun of him a little bit because he's not here. But
I'll be sure to tell him.
Thought nobody was watching, but we were watching him playing with Dino. So that's pretty much. We can go to the next slide to introduce the panel. So what we'd like to do now is kind of just quickly introduce the panel, and I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves. I'm getting a little tired of talking, and maybe starting with Eric, we can do quick introductions. What you do, why you're interested in this field, and then we can launch into some of the more interesting questions. Eric, you want to start?
Okay, so on my side, my firm, we're investing in a cloud and data AI company, creating a company which have full stack solutions for different vertical market like insurance or factoring and so forth. Also investing in more technology. The development of AI solution is still very manual. Frankly, we make an analogy, we're still a pre-DevOps, pre-cloud space, for the traditional software development, and AI has a long way to go. The second aspect is we do a lot of investment, identifying company in Israel, in Europe, or even in India, which have some great technology and product, and helping them to scale globally, because there are a lot of AI competence centers all over the world. It's not only Silicon Valley.
Thanks, Eric. Eileen?
Yeah, hi, I'm Eileen Tanghal. I know many of you in the audience. I've been part of the corporate venturing community for a long time, so at Applied Materials and ARM, and then because of this conference, I got to know George, and he recruited me into In-Q-Tel 5.5 years ago. And currently, I am the managing director of our London office. So briefly, In-Q-Tel is the venture capital partner for the intelligence community, CIA, NSA, 6 other agencies. But perhaps some of you may not know is that about 4 years ago, we established offices in both London and in Sydney. And we are investing on behalf of both the Australian and the UK government's defense and intelligence communities as well, outside of the United States. So for In-Q-Tel, of course, we call them mission partners. For our mission partners, we invest, we're a very prolific investor. We are investing all the way from materials all the way to full systems to help our mission partners keep all of us secure and safe. And I'll go more. We have lots and lots of AI companies all in every part of the stack of AI, and I can talk more about it as we go through the panel.
Christina?
I'm Christina Seraphim. I'm one of the managing directors at Verizon Ventures. At Verizon Ventures, we invest in early stage companies that are strategically relevant for all of our business units at Verizon, both on the consumer and the enterprise side. AI, and starting with big data a few years ago, and then ML, and now AI are areas that we've been investing in and continue to be of high strategic importance to the company.
Thanks, Christina. So one of the reasons I put up a few slides at the beginning around the AI Council is because we're really excited about this for GCV and just for our own businesses in general. And and one of the goals here is to see if there's other people who are in the audience who want to be part of this and want to sign up. So I hope you'll do that. But maybe I can ask you guys to just talk a little bit about the collaborations that we're doing in the AI Council and just give a little bit of a pitch to what you're getting out of it or what you hope to get out of it.
No, I would say AI is a pretty complex subject. It's pretty easy to relate AI to the pure technology, but in fact, it has a big impact on the society. I still believe AI today, we're in the days of narrow AI, which is really helping the human to do a good job. And packaging, this technology with use case, with obviously the regulatory environment is quite important. So I think it's a topic which is very difficult to grasp currently. And that's what I think the ecosystem that we are trying to put together with this AI Global Council is so important. We need the input of users, we need the input of technologists, academics, regulator, and I believe that AI is going to move to the next step, mainly through a pretty broad industry collaboration. And I believe GCVI has an important role to play because of you being both consumer or customers of technology, at the same time investors.
Any other thoughts? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll apologize now, but of course, remember, I work with the government, but we're in an era of great power competition enabled effectively by who has what technology. And so it's important for our nation and our allies to understand the developments that are happening, not just here, but around the world, which is why it's important to be part of a global AI council. On a practical matter, our customers, our mission partners, they need the best solutions out there to do their jobs. And we have to find those. And so really collaborating with other corporates who, the way that In-Q-Tel works, if you don't know, is we're looking for dual-use technologies. Often these companies are making products for yourselves, call it predictive maintenance products if you're an industrial, and they don't realize that their product, with just a slight tweak, has a very big mission applicability for our customers, and that's what we're doing. So we like to collaborate with all corporate venturing arms. Even if you think, boy, that has nothing to do with me, it usually does. We invest in everything because we know what the mission use cases are, what the needs are of our customers. And when we see the tech in AI, we can go, yep, that can be used for this, this, or that. So that's really, really why we're doing it. But very big picture, we're in an era of great nation competition. Our adversaries, again, please excuse the speak, but our adversaries on a national security level do not follow the same rules that perhaps we do. And so we need to be aware of that and make sure that we're on top of it.
So I'll just give an unsolicited plug for Eileen and In-Q-Tel and George William. So as a deep tech investor, I have In-Q-Tel on my speed dial. I mean, wherever I go and look at AI, data science, and other deep tech, In-Q-Tel was either there. George and I used to joke, like, we'd go to a meeting with a startup and, on the board, George was here or Jeff was here. So we were following each other around. So I feel like you guys are extremely innovative and you invest in a lot of companies. So
yeah,
maybe,
and that's what we're doing outside of the U.S. now. So,
yeah,
that's why we've staffed ourselves in Sydney and London and soon to be other cities.
Yeah, so before we get into too much startup and investment, Christina, so you work for a very big company, Verizon. Your market cap, I should know this, I'm an investor, a public investor. It's a couple $100 billion, I think, right? I mean, you guys, obviously AI has to be on the forefront of the agenda within the corporation. Forget about where you invest. What is Verizon doing to kind of promote AI and build programs? I mean, do you have a chief AI innovation officer? Do you have a task force? Is every business unit doing it on their own? Is it organized? Is it not? I think you guys can probably use it as an example for some of the folks in the audience and some other large corps.
Yeah, so we do have a chief data science and AI officer, Linda Avery, who has an entire team that also works with the individual business units who have smaller teams that are focusing on AI and integration. And these are her words, not mine, but I completely agree with it, that the effectiveness of AI is about the integration throughout the organization. And that's where also the AI Council comes into play, not just integration within Verizon internally, but also externally amongst our partners, customers, as well as other organizations like the AI Council. 70% of the effectiveness is coming from that integration, the effectiveness of the integration. And the other, I think, 15% is what, again, her words, not mine, is data or algorithms.
And what are kind of some of the key things, key initiatives, key areas? Like, is it for customer retention?
Yep.
Is it for figuring out where to place your cell towers?
Right.
Can you talk, maybe if you can, if it's not too confidential?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. No, I think AI is a very powerful technology for automated decision making. It can be applied across, we strive to apply AI across the internal organization and processes, as we have both the consumer and the enterprise business. The enterprise business is really working with Verizon's enterprise customers that range across different verticals. And so internally, across literally all of the different business units and processes, from the network organization, which is obviously critical, the health of the network, and as well as the finance, IT, customer experience. And then on the enterprise side, across smart manufacturing, robotics, 3D mapping, some of the verticals that are strategically relevant because they're taking, how we define strategically relevant are industries and customers that leverage 5G and edge.
So pretty much everything, right? I mean, that's pretty long list. And,
Yeah.
and how does Verizon Ventures kind of fit in? I assume you guys are, looking for key like, I know all three of us were investors at one point in a company called OmniSci, right? Which was
Heavy.ai.
Which was Heavy. They've changed their name three times. I can't keep up with it, but they were looking at kind of applications for looking at cell tower data, right, and figuring out like optimal placement, right? But how do you guys work together to achieve that agenda?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work both with our data science and AI team as well as with the individual business unit teams. Ventures complement their efforts with innovative emerging startups that address some of the critical areas, both, as you said, on the visualization side, as well as a couple recent investments to note on the data streaming and real-time analytics side, Swim.ai, Universal Database, TileDB, another AI inference company, Neural Magic, that addresses more of the computer vision use cases. But these are venture portfolio companies that really drive that innovation or complement the internal efforts that are going on.
So Eileen, you talked a little bit about why AI and innovation is so important. What are some of the actual areas that you think are very, very important to defense organizations, national intelligence with AI?
So there's an acronym for any of you who have been in the military. You probably know this. What do defense and intelligence do? They orient, they observe, right? They decide, and then they act. So what they need to do, of course, is AI and ML are force multipliers for themselves on the ground, and because there's not enough people. So let's just talk about observation, right? Observation and collection of information so you can decide what to do and inform policymakers. Well, you can't multiply a person on the ground looking at everything. So you have to instead, let's say you have a camera in a remote area that's trying to figure out whether something bad is happening. What AI and ML can do is, instead of you draining the battery by constantly taking photos of what's going on, or let's say you have some sort of listening device and you're trying to listen to everything, you can put inference on the edge and say, when I hear this keyword, when I see this specific license plate, when I see this specific thing that's happening, I wake up and I maybe start communicating back to the server, or I start doing other processes. So that's on the observation side. On the analysis side, you probably know about Project Maven.
Somewhat controversial, right?
Yeah, right.
Some people
like
don't
everybody.
Some people quit their jobs at their companies because they were involved, right? If I recall.
Yeah, no comment, but I have no problem doing other things for people who suppress entire nations. But I won't get politics into it. Anyway, so on the analysis side, what are they looking for? They're looking for patterns of life, patterns of behavior, looking at what's going on with the cell towers. Again, from an analysis point of view, AI/ML and models can help someone who is maybe not the most proficient data scientist do their job, right? So now then finally on the kind of decide and act. If you're trying to think of scenarios of what you do next, and you have to inform a policymaker, like, this is what's happening, this is what the data says, this is what you should do, and they go, well, what if we do A, B, or C? That's why digital twins are useful, right? So okay, I'm going to do a scenario analysis of what happens if I implement this. So, if you think of that loop of what they're doing all the time, which is orient, observe, decide, act, and by the way, that's applicable to any industry. We just happen to be doing it for national security.
Yeah, it's amazing how many synergies we find. And so Eric, like me, you're a financial VC. And so maybe you have a different perspective. Maybe talk about some of the areas. We'll get to ethics later, but other than ethics, what are the key areas of AI investment that you guys think are really exciting? And maybe talk about a couple of
I think it's two main directions. Obviously, today, given the state of the technology, it still have to be a full integrated stack. AI to deliver value to user, especially recommendation engine, decision support, has to be a fully integrated stack. We have about 10 companies in this space, ranging from providing productivity in manufacturing, insurance, different type of marketing tools and so forth. Maybe to give you an example, even if there's a little bit of a consumer nervousness with AI, we have invested in a company here in California which is totally automating the recycling in the sense of selecting a paper or carton box or glasses on the recycling, and that's typically a job that nobody wants to do anymore in California. It's done by first-generation immigrants, so this type of things. On the other axis is basically tools, because if you think about AI, it's still a manual process at the end of the day. There is a need to a lot of tools to clean the data, to get more accuracy with a certain number of data sets, especially in the video, how you're cleaning the data. There's a lot of issue on data privacy, because in AI, if there's no truth in your data, the output is biased. So there is a full development chain which has to be put in place. So we're investing in that. But I would say what we've learned through the investment is that, a lot of people are mixing AI with SaaS. Is very different. It takes a lot of time for this company on one side to combine the data and the algorithm to create a solution. But moving from a solution to a use case is another step. And then from a use case, you have to move to a user adoption with no friction. So this whole incubation and creation period is a bit longer than the SaaS company. Now, the good news, when the company hit it, a good use case, no friction, usually they demand, very nice revenue. Their customer engagement are more six-figure type of engagement than, 3 or 4 figures for SaaS. So it's a totally different way to look at the idea of the innovation. And frankly, the sky is the limit, to be honest. There are so many use cases because fundamentally today, the technology helps the human to focus on the interesting part of the job. The boring task of the job can be automated, and now you use the brain to handle exception on the use case.
Very interesting. So you're kind of leading the charge for us on the ethics side, and Eric's kind of the voice in our ear telling us to worry that ethics is important. Before we get to that, though, I want to get on something pretty timely. So obviously, the fundraising, the economic environment, the VC environment has started to shift. We feel the ground shaking, or it's already happened. What do we think this means for the funding and the innovation in AI startups? Are things just going to continue as usual? Because this is, in my view, this is one of the most powerful disruptive technologies in our time. It's existed for a long time. We just didn't have compute horsepower to do it. Is anything going to change, or do you think this area is going to be relatively unaffected? Curious what your thoughts are.
You want to start? No, I think the good news for me today, almost every company that comes to pitch to us, there is an AI component, even if there is none. So that at least the good news now, putting AI on a slide deck is not to help you to get finance. So I think there will be a flight to quality. So that's a good news. And also, as I mentioned before, we are still in this space of narrow AI. And there are still some fundamental technology innovation to be done, like a graph technology, different tool set. I think a kind of situation where we are is going to make the VC come back at a more fundamental technology stage. So this type of things are going to be financed, which is good news. We may see the result in 3 to 4 years. Obviously, this reduced funding will make a natural selection, which will make the selection by the customer or corporation a bit easier. And also, we know also that on the corporate side, a lot of youth have a lot of, AI Skunks project, AI innovation. that unfortunately some will be killed or trimmed. So I think it will bring a return to sanity, which is healthier. And frankly, what I've learned dealing with companies when they're in the early stage, this whole phase where you need to get your algorithm, your data, your use case together, you don't need an army to do that. You still need very simple, very nimble team to do that. So I suspect this team will not be too much impacted by of course, a more difficult access to capital.
So I entered venture capital in 2002 as a financial VC, and then corporate VC in 2008. And so this is maybe third downturn, I guess. And you start to see, all I'm going to say is the corporates in here are going to get very, very popular. That's what happens. So what happens is financial VCs do a barbell strategy. Either they go really, really early because it's low valuations and they can wait it out, or they go for the sure late things. The sure late things are they have high valuation, but they have lots of revenue or they're profitable. And that's what you see the financial VCs do. So these companies stuck in the middle, the Series B, they're going to look for partnerships, M&A opportunity, right? You know, from being at NVIDIA and ARM and Applied. So they're going to look for partnerships, and they're going to be looking for revenue. And so when the financial stuff dries up, because you're not either a seed or A company or a C or D company, that's when the corporates come in. And so as a corporate venturer, you have a lot of leverage or power at that point in view to go, okay, I'm going to invest, but you're also going to do this for my business unit.
And that's because you have no real LPs. You have the CIA, the US government, who you can talk to and say, hey, this is what we're going to do, and they're motivated by things other than immediate financial.
That's right. I mean, In-Q-Tel always gets really, really busy during these downturns. Right. So everybody starts going, oh, the government is a good customer. But I'd argue the corporations are the same. I mean, most corporations are not valuing themselves on how well the venture portfolio is doing. They're valuing themselves on, do you have innovation coming through, and are you partnering with companies that we might even acquire? So that's why I think anybody that's in corporate venture, you're just going to get very popular, even more so.
Christina, what do you think?
I think there's still a lot of capital to be deployed, sitting here right in front of me, right? And I think that though we are seeing a correction in valuations across different industries, in AI specifically, I think the strong companies, which are technically differentiated, and I think for AI, where I see that differentiation going even further is in the domain expertise in the vertical AI space. Companies with technical differentiation, strong teams, vertical expertise are going to continue to be able to raise funding probably at adjusted valuations, but that's not necessarily a bad thing both for the company and for the
Yeah, I personally believe we're in the early innings of the AI revolution. I mean, the technology's been around for a while, but the compute horsepower wasn't there, the access to data, and really the big bang is only 7 years old. But last thing I want to say, just any predictions? I know you believe, Eric, ethics is going to be a big deal in AI. I think topics like sensor fusion, like fusing together, not just vision and voice, but other inputs, is going to become a much bigger deal in AI. Right now, we're very mono in the way we do it, and I also think federated learning is going to become a very interesting issue of AI this year, which is sharing models without relegating privacy. But I don't know if either of you or all of you want to just make quick predictions on what are some of the things we're going to be talking about this year.
So I think and hopefully the Global AI Council will help on this, is that there's still a black box problem within AI. So I am a non-practitioner. I'm not the one who did a code, but it's telling that I put some input in and it's telling me blah. And I don't know what happened in the middle.
Explainable AI.
Exactly. So I think that when that starts to really hit, so let's say you're going to go to the doctor and now the AI assistant is telling you, yep, this thing you have is cancer. And the person that programmed the model actually wasn't a doctor. You're going to go, oh, wait a minute, what happened from here to here? Because this is a programmer at a startup that did it for about, 6 months, and now this software is being used by a practitioner to make a diagnosis on a patient, or, there's other examples. And so I think really this idea of explainable AI and how you went from this data set to this kind of model is important. The other part I'm going to say is that a lot of the data sets even today are not diverse enough. So, everybody knows the whole, some cameras don't go on when a person of color walks by, which is crazy because the data set wasn't there to train them on the. There's some sensors that don't even turn on when you have dark skin because the light doesn't, this is ridiculous. There's O2 sensors on patients that don't work because it wasn't designed that way. So think about AI data sets, not including diversity, being trained to make models that make decisions. That's pretty bad.
I think
So
this
it's
feeds into the ethics question.
Absolutely.
So if in 5 seconds, Christina or Eric, you want to just give a final thought, 1 or 2 topics that you think are of interest, just 5 seconds.
So in 5 seconds, obviously
We're the only thing standing between lunch,
lunch.
and this.
Panel.
Oh, we do? Okay, we better get going.
Yeah.
So, quick one, Eric?
Yeah, no, it's very simple. More and more data will have to be processed at the edge.
Okay.
How you combine data and edge and AI is still a white page.
Yeah,
Still a
Christina?
white page.
Yeah, edge and the vertical AI or domain expertise, I think
Yeah.
also auto ML and some of the, it's all predicated also on
So let me go
effective
full
data
circle.
management.
So these are all great topics. We're going to discuss it in the AI Council. We're going to have sessions. We're going to have events. So encourage you all to join, and we can dive in. We could spend hours in this. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Sorry to run over time.
Could you?